Hey, algebra students, in this lesson we are going to be practicing using unit analysis to convert measures from one unit to another unit. This is something that might be familiar to you, maybe not. If it's not familiar, you're probably going to see that at first this is going to seem a little overwhelming and difficult. But it's also going to be something that has a really good explanation. I can give you a really good explanation why we do this, the way that we do it, why it works, so that you understand the reason that it works. You're going to understand how to do it, and with practice, you'll get really good at this. I was going to say that this is something that comes back again and again and again in Saxon algebra. So the better you get at this, the happier you're going to be in the long term. All right, so what are we talking about here when we talk about converting measures? Well, really what we're talking about is using something called unit ratios or conversion factors. These are ratios that compare two measures that name the same amount. Let's take a look at a few examples of unit conversion factors. Here I have 12 inches and 1 foot. 12 inches divided by 1 foot is a unit conversion factor. It's a ratio. 1 meter to 100 centimeters and 3 feet to 1 yard. These are all the same amount on the top and bottom, but they're different numbers. 12 and 1 are obviously different numbers. But really what I'm doing is I'm dividing an amount on top. Because of the unit label, it's the same as the amount on the bottom. Now let's go back to the word unit in unit ratio. What root do you hear in the word unit? You hear unit, uni, like one? These numbers are all just fancy ways of writing the number 1. 12 inches is the same as 1 foot. Hey, what happens when you divide a number by the same number, like 5 divided by 5, or 8 divided by 8, or -2 divided by -2? When you divide a number by the same number, you always get 1. And that's exactly what we're doing here. 12 inches is the same amount as 1 foot. I'm dividing a number by an equivalent number. And because I'm doing that, I actually am just looking at a fancy expression of the number 1. Now again, in your mind, you're like, wait a second, that's 12 over 1. That's not 1. But the unit labels make all the difference. When I put inches after 12 and feet after 1, I turn these into equivalent units. Okay, I'm going to show you how to use these in just a bit. Let's talk about some other things here. Since the amounts are equal, a unit ratio is always equal to 1. That's what we just said. And then unit ratios can also be flipped upside down and they'll still be the same number. Like if I flip over this one, I get 1 feet per 12 inches. This one, oh, there's a mistake. Let me fix that. 100 centimeters over 1 meter. It's an equivalent unit because it's just 1. These are all 1. The same with this one, 1 yard over 3 feet. So I can flip a unit conversion factor upside down, and it's okay to do it because I'm still dealing with the number 1. All right, now we're going to look at an example of a unit conversion factor problem in just a second. First thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to introduce this exploration that we're going to be doing here in just a moment. We're going to be converting yards, square yards, into square feet in just a second, okay? So the reason that these come up now is because we talked about exponents not that long ago, and we're going to be dealing with unit conversion factors intermingled with exponents. In this lesson, you've got to become familiar with all. You've done unit conversion factors in the past. This is not something that's new to you, but what you maybe haven't done is unit conversion factors with exponents, and that's what's new about this lesson. All right, let's take a look at a real world example here. We're going to convert 1 yard into feet. How am I going to convert 1 yard into feet? Well, I need to multiply by 1. And I'm going to multiply by a fancy version of 1. I'm going to note that in 1 yard, there is 3 feet. Okay? 3 feet divided by 1 yard is still 1. It's just a fancy version of the number 1. Okay, so here I have 3 feet for 1 yard. And I'm going to go ahead and multiply these two numbers together. And what do I get? Well, I find that when I multiply 1 yard times 3 feet per 1 yard, let me just put a times sign here, maybe extend the size of this. Okay, perfect. And then we're going to say that this equals, well, what does it equal when I multiply 1 times 3 over 1? Well, I'm going to end up with the number 3. Okay, 3 what? Well, let's just take a look at what happened here. This yard here cancels out with this yard in the denominator. One of these yards is in the numerator, one of these yards is in the denominator, and therefore they cancel each other out. When I chose the conversion factor 3 feet per 1 yard, the reason I chose that is because yard was in the denominator and I can multiply them together and cancel out the yards. And then what I'm left with, let's see, what unit didn't cancel? And then I ask myself, what unit didn't cancel? And I see that the only unit that didn't cancel up here is feet. So my answer is 3 feet. Now that's how I do a unit conversion when I don't have any square units. I just choose the conversion factor that's going to get me the number I'm looking for. And then I can go ahead and use that to solve. Okay, I'm struggling here to get this out of the way. There we go. All right, next. What happens if I do have these squares? I'm going to go ahead and answer some of these questions over here. Letter A, what is the area of the first square? Show your calculation. 1 yard times 1 yard equals 1 square yard. Letter B, what is the area of the second square? Well, that's 3 feet times 3 feet equals 9 square feet. Now here's something I noticed. The first square with the yards is the same as the second square with the feet. Because when I converted yards to feet, I found that there were 3 feet per yard just a moment ago. That's what I did up here. So if I look at these two squares, I realize they're equivalent to each other. If I divide one of these numbers by the other, I should get a unit conversion factor. I should get 1 because they're equivalents. All right, so the next letter C says write the 2 unit ratios for converting between feet and yards. That's what's up here. So I'm going to say up above because it's up here, 3 feet per 1 yard or 1 yard per 3 feet. Those are my 2 conversion factors that I have to choose from. Letter D, which unit ratio should be used for converting yards to feet? Well, let's look up here, also up above. Because here I had 1 yard and I was trying to convert it to feet. So what do? I choose the conversion factor that has yards in the denominator so that yards cancels out yards here. And then feet is the only thing that's left. It didn't cancel. So I'm left with feet in my final answer. Letter E, write a unit ratio to convert the area of the first square to square feet. Well, one thing that I can do, I could say that the first square is 1 square yard times, and then looking at A and B here, I know that there's 1 square yard for every 9 square feet. So I'm going to multiply by a unit conversion factor that's going to cancel out square yards. 9 square feet divided by 1 square yard. Okay, 1, and let's see what happens here. So I'm going to cancel off my yards squared, and I'm going to cancel off my other yards squared because I went directly from yards squared to square feet, and I'm going to be left with this equal to 9 square feet. Okay, this probably seems super confusing to some of you. If this seems confusing, don't worry. I'm going to do this again in a little bit of an easier way in just a moment. We are going to answer F. Why is it necessary to multiply by the unit ratio twice to convert square yards to square feet? Well, let's take a look at the other way to do this by multiplying by the unit ratio twice. We're taking 1 yard and changing it to feet. We're taking 1 yard and changing it to feet. But the problem is I'm not starting off with yards. I'm starting off with square yards. So I have to convert square yards to feet. And not just to feet, to square feet. Okay? So what am I going to do to convert square yards to square feet? I'm just going to get rid of the end of this for right now, and let's just take a look at the problem at hand. So if I just run this cancellation, what did I cancel here by multiplying by 3 feet per yard? Well, this yard is going to cancel with 1 of these yards here. How do I cancel off the other yard? Well, what you can do is you can actually just multiply by the conversion factor again. So I'm going to do it once again times 3 feet per 1 yard. And let's see what that looks like. So 3 feet per 1 yard, I'm going to move that over. This second yard is going to cancel the other yard in yards squared. Because what is yards squared? It's yard times yards. I needed 2 yards to cancel it off. So if something is squared, what I need to do is multiply by the conversion factor twice. And then what am I left with? 1 times 3 times 3. Notice also that it's feet times feet, okay? So 1 times 3 is 9. Let me just extend the length of this. We're going to say this equals 9. And what am I left with for my unit label? Well, here I have feet, and then I have times feet. This is going to be 9 feet squared. So the point is I multiplied by my conversion factor 2 times to change a square unit into a different square unit. I had to multiply twice. We can do this with cubes too. So if I have a 1 by 1 by 1 cube, a 1 cubic yard, that's the volume of the first cube, by the way, 1 cubic yard. The volume of the second cube is, let's see, 3 times 3, but then there's another 3 to the back. I have to multiply base times width times, or length times width times height. So 3 times 3 times 3 is 27 cubic feet. I could just use the ratio 1 cubic yard equals 27 cubic feet, or 1 cubic yard over 27 cubic feet. That equals 1 because the numerator and denominator are the same. Or what I could do is just multiply 3 times. So it would be the same as down here, except yards would be cubed, and I'd have to multiply by 3 feet per yard times 3 feet per yard times 3 feet per yard to get rid of that extra yard, and I'd be left with 27 feet cubed. Okay, so if that doesn't quite make sense to you yet, we are going to work some practice problems. We'll see what this is all about. It should be pretty easy for us to use regular unit conversions. It gets a little bit more complicated. We add the extra layer of if we have squared or cubic units, but I'm confident we can do it. Let's move on to the lesson practice.